Good evening, kind soul, and welcome to this peaceful space. Whether you've come to gently end your day or are simply seeking a quiet refuge from the noise of the world, I'm truly glad you're here. Tonight, we'll journey back in time, not to kings and conquests, but into the quiet, steady rhythm of a single day in the life of a medieval knight. If you'd like, share in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is. There's something soothing about knowing we're drifting through this moment together, across time zones and centuries. And if stories of the past, the stars, and the mind bring you comfort, feel free to subscribe so you never miss one. Now, let's begin. Before the dawn, the night's morning ritual. The world is still dark. A pale moon lingers over the horizon, casting soft silver across dew-laden grass. Birds have not yet stirred in their nests, and the castle is hushed, save for the crackle of a torch or the soft scuff of boots on stone. Inside the knight's chamber, a room of thick stone walls, modest tapestries and sturdy oak beams, the day quietly begins. Our knight lies still, wrapped in thick woolen blankets, resting on a bed that's simple but practical. A straw-stuffed mattress, a carved wooden frame, and the faint scent of iron and leather in the air. Reminders of a life spent in discipline and preparation. This is not a life of luxury, even for those of noble birth. Rather, it is a life of purpose. Before the sun crests the hills, he rises. The first breath of the day is deep and measured. His eyes open not with haste, but with quiet understanding. There is work to be done, not just in the duties of war or defense, but in the shaping of one's self. A knight is bound not only by steel, but by oath. He begins with prayer. A small wooden crucifix hangs near his bedside. Kneeling on the cold stone floor, he bows his head. The words are soft and old, a mixture of Latin and the tongue of his homeland. He offers gratitude for waking, for strength, and for the chance to serve with honor. He prays for guidance, for protection of his liege, and for mercy on those who suffer. There is no audience for this prayer, no ceremony, only stillness. It is as much a ritual of the soul as the sharpening of a blade. After prayer comes the washing. A squire, already up before his master, enters with a basin of water drawn from the castle's well, warmed near the kitchen hearth. The knight cleanses his face, hands and neck, wiping away the restfulness of the night. It is a symbolic gesture as well, shedding dreams for duty, preparing to face the day with clarity. He dresses not in armor, but in the garments beneath it, a long linen tunic, worn soft with age, woolen hose to guard against the morning chill, a padded gambeson, quilted, thick, and surprisingly heavy, is pulled over his head and tied at the chest. This layer protects him from the chafing of chainmail and bears the first weight of the warrior's uniform. It's often stained with old sweat and the scent of horses, but it is as familiar as a second skin. As he dresses, the knight speaks quietly with his squire. The conversation is brief, efficient. They speak of the schedule for the day, whether training will take place in the yard, whether they are to ride out, whether a noble court is to be held. The squire is young, alert, and respectful. He handles the knight's gear with care, setting aside each piece of armor for when it is needed later. He is learning not only to serve, but to one day follow in his master's footsteps. Down in the castle kitchens, the first meal of the day is being prepared. It is humble, bread baked the day before, slightly hardened by now, served with cheese wrapped in cloth, and sometimes a boiled egg or broth if the stores allow. The knight eats standing or seated at a long wooden bench, sometimes with other men-at-arms, sometimes alone in thought. This is not a leisurely affair. The food is fuel for the body, and the body must be strong. While he eats, he watches the courtyard through narrow windows, the kind built more for defense than beauty. The sky has begun to lighten, tinged with the soft gold of a rising sun. The silhouettes of other castle dwellers move like shadows. Stable boys feeding horses, servants sweeping stone paths, a blacksmith's forge already glowing with early fire. It is a world beginning to stir, each cog in the great wheel of the medieval day, turning into motion. After the meal, the knight makes his way to the chapel. Every castle has one, some large and ornate, others little more than a single sanctified room. Here, he joins others for morning mass. The room is quiet, filled with the scent of wax and incense. A priest leads in Latin, offering blessings, invoking saints, and reading scripture. For the knight, this is not merely a routine, it is a tether to faith, to duty, to a sense of divine order in a world often ruled by chaos and violence. By the time Mass concludes, the sun has fully risen. Light now streams through narrow stained glass windows, painting colored shapes on cold stone. Outside, the day is alive. Horses are being saddled. Soldiers are lining up for drills. Traders are passing through the gates. And the knight, now centered in body and spirit, steps into that world. Before his armor is donned, he visits the armory. Here, his sword rests. Not just a weapon, but a companion. Its hilt is worn smooth from years of practice. The blade, though sharpened often, still carries faint nicks, reminders of battles survived. He inspects it, holds it with a quiet reverence, and returns it to its scabbard. To carry a sword is to accept responsibility for life and death. Back in the courtyard, his squire begins the process of armoring him. Piece by piece, the transformation begins. Chainmail first, a hauberk of interlocked rings, heavy and shimmering in the light. Then the metal plates, greaves for the legs, vambraces for the arms, and the cuirass for the chest. Each is buckled, adjusted, and tested. Finally, the helmet, though it will not be worn unless needed. The full ensemble is a burden, often weighing over 60 pounds, but he wears it with practiced ease. And now he is ready. This is not yet the moment for battle. No trumpet sounds, no banner waves. This is simply the start of a day, one of many in a life shaped by duty, discipline, and devotion. A life where each morning begins with quiet strength, spiritual grounding, and the solemn ritual of preparation. As the knight steps into the castle yard, boots echoing on stone. He does not do so as a symbol of war, but of order. A keeper of peace in a world where peace is fragile. A protector of his people, a servant to his Lord, and a man bound by a code that shapes not only how he fights, but how he lives. The day stretches ahead, full of uncertainty, full of purpose. And it all began here, before the dawn, in a small chamber with a whispered prayer and the first breath of light. Forging duty, armor, arms, and oaths. The armor shines dully in the morning light, no longer the polished gleam of a ceremonial piece, but worn, reliable, and real. A second skin forged not for parade, but for purpose. For the night, it is not just protection, it is identity, a daily reminder of duty, of oaths spoken before altar and Lord, of a life pledged not to comfort, but to honor. The castle yard hums with activity. Stable hands lead horses out into the sun, their hooves striking the cobblestones with gentle rhythm. Farriers examine iron shoes, while squires run with buckets, saddles, and oiled leathers. Somewhere nearby, the rhythmic clang of hammer on metal rings out from the forge, the blacksmith already well into his morning labor. Our knight stands tall, his armor now fully secured by his young squire, who adjusts the final straps with careful hands. There is pride in the squire's face, pride in the sacred task of preparing a knight for the day. For him, this is not mere assistance. It is apprenticeship in the most noble of arts, the art of discipline, protection, and sacred combat. The knight nods his thanks. No words are needed. They understand each other. Before the training or the riding or the diplomacy begins, there is one thing the knight must do. He visits the armory, again, this time not just to retrieve his sword, but to engage in the ancient and private ritual of inspection. Each weapon tells a story. The sword, of course, is the centerpiece. Forged years ago by the finest smith in the region, it carries more than metal within its frame. It has drawn blood. It has saved lives. It has answered challenges. The grip is worn smooth, where his gauntlets have held it countless times. The blade itself, though sharp and serviceable, bears subtle signs of experience, tiny nicks along the edge, small imperfections that speak of battles fought and survived. He draws it slowly, the metal singing softly against the scabbard. He holds it in both hands, testing its weight, its balance, as if to reacquaint himself each morning with an old friend. Beside it, a dagger, smaller, but just as vital, a tool as much as a weapon, used for utility and, if necessary, for quiet defense when the sword cannot speak in time. Then the shield. Not always carried, especially on days when combat is not expected, but always kept nearby. Its surface bears the sigil of his house, a faded lion now, the paint chipped in places, but still proud. Each scratch, each dent, tells of a strike received, of a life preserved, and perhaps most striking of all, hanging near the weapon racks, is a chain of tokens. Small items collected over time, a cloth torn from a standard, a carved bead gifted by a rescued peasant child, a piece of scorched wood from a battlefield chapel. None are valuable in coin, but in memory they are priceless. A knight carries many burdens, and these tokens help him remember why he carries them at all. After inspecting his arms, the knight steps outside again. The air has warmed slightly, and the sun now rises fully above the towers, casting long golden lines across the castle grounds. The banners ripple gently in the breeze, bearing the colours of his lord. They serve as both decoration and declaration, reminders to all who pass through the gates of who rules here, and of those sworn to defend that rule. Soon, he joins other knights in the practice yard. Here, the morning drills begin. Clad in full armour or partial dress depending on the task, knights and squires alike engage in the eternal rhythm of repetition. Strike, block, parry, pivot. Wooden practice swords clack loudly against each other. Some wield long swords. Others prefer maces or axes. The air is filled with grunts of exertion and the low murmur of instructors offering correction. For the knight, training is not an afterthought. It is a vow to remain sharp, focused, prepared. Battle may not come today or tomorrow or ever again, but if it does, he must meet it with readiness, not rust. He spars with another seasoned knight, a man he knows well. Their movements are swift, calculated, and respectful. Each clash is an exercise in trust as much as technique. Neither seeks to wound, each seeks to refine. Nearby, squires observe closely. Their eyes track every motion, learning through watching what their arms are not yet strong enough to attempt. One day, they too will take the field, and they will remember these mornings. As training concludes, the knight returns to the shade of a nearby overhang, removing his helmet. His face is flushed, hair damp with sweat, but his eyes are clear. This, too, is part of his armor. Not the steel, but the spirit within it. After wiping down his blade and removing his outer layers of armor, he allows his squire to tend to the equipment. The boy kneels beside the shield, running a cloth across its surface, checking the bindings, making quiet notes in his mind. For a squire, every detail matters. A loosened strap or dulled edge could be the difference between glory and death. Now, with the morning routine complete, the knight makes his way to the great hall. Not for feasting, that comes later, but for the council. Today his presence is requested. Lords gather in stone rooms with vaulted ceilings. Maps unrolled across wide tables. Discussions range from taxation to land disputes, from bandit sightings to diplomatic correspondence from distant kingdoms. A knight must be more than a sword. He must be a speaker, a listener, a voice of reason. His words carry weight not just for their wisdom, but because they are backed by action. When he speaks of loyalty, it is not abstract. He has bled for it. When he speaks of justice, it is not academic. He has fought for it. And if he is summoned by his liege lord, a stern, aging duke with silver in his beard and memory of war in his eyes, he bows with sincerity, listens with patience, and answers with care. Loyalty is not blind, but it is absolute. Then comes the matter of oaths. Every so often, a new knight is sworn into service. When that happens, the hall quiets. A young man kneels before the Lord, palm resting on the hilt of a sword placed upright in the ground. He speaks the words, sacred, rehearsed, but deeply personal. I swear to protect the weak, to uphold the law, to serve with honor and courage, to be the shield of my people, the blade of justice, and the hand of mercy. Our knight watches in silence. He remembers his own oath, taken years ago, his voice trembling slightly with youth, his heart pounding with the weight of the vow. That moment changed him, not by magic, but by meaning. From that point on, his life belonged not just to himself, but to others. The ritual ends. The new night rises, and the hall erupts in measured applause, not boisterous, but dignified. A brother has joined the order, and as the hour grows near to midday, the knight steps back into the sun once more. He has trained, he has advised, he has remembered. The sword at his side does not define him, nor the armor on his chest. What defines him is the oath, the steady heartbeat of his duty, the quiet conviction that his life is given to something greater than himself. The world of the night is not one of romance and grandeur, though songs may try to make it so. It is a world of responsibility, of discipline, and of service, a forge where duty is shaped not in fire and anvil alone, but in every choice made when no one is watching. And in the distance, a horn sounds, a summons. The next chapter of the day begins. Breakfast in the barracks, feasting like a warrior. The horn echoes through the courtyard, long and steady. A call not to arms, but to sustenance. The knight, along with squires and fellow men-at-arms, begins making his way toward the barracks hall. It is a structure separate from the grandeur of the Lord's keep. Less ornamented, more practical. A place built for function, not display. The walls are thick with the scent of hearth smoke and baked bread, and the tables are long, worn smooth by generations of elbows and iron-rimmed mugs. The morning has already demanded much: spiritual centering, physical labor, mental discipline. Now, the body needs replenishment. And though the term feast might summon images of golden goblets and roasted boar, the truth here is simpler, and yet deeply meaningful. For the night, breakfast is not a gluttonous affair, but a communal ritual, a grounding moment among comrades before the day continues. He enters the hall through a side door, unarmored now, save for his sword and belt. His gambeson is still laced at the collar, though the sleeves are loosened to allow cool air to reach the skin. Around him, others filter in, some older and grizzled with years of service, some young and new to the discipline of knightly life. They are not seated by rank. At this table, every man is equal in hunger. The first sent to greet them is of fresh bread, brown loaves with crusts baked thick and hearty. They are sliced with a dull iron blade and passed down the line, each man tearing a portion with calloused fingers. Alongside the bread come hunks of cheese, salted, aged, and wrapped in cloth to preserve it. A bowl of warm porridge simmers over the central fire, thick with oats and flavored with herbs from the garden. If the stores are good that week, there may be an egg for each man, boiled and slightly cracked. And if fortune has smiled, there might be slices of dried meat, saved from the hunt, seasoned and dark with age. There is little talk at first. Hunger takes precedence. Wooden spoons scrape gently against clay bowls. Mugs of watered ale or warmed cider are raised to tired lips. The knight eats slowly, deliberately. His body is a tool, and food is its maintenance. Not indulgence, but necessity. Every bite serves a purpose: to restore, to sustain, to prepare. Around him, the quiet rhythm of a martial community begins to surface. A veteran tells a tale of a skirmish from seasons past, his voice low and textured like gravel. Two young squires whisper about a training match gone wrong, one clutching his arm, the other apologizing between bites. A cleric, seated among them as both guest and guide, speaks briefly of a saint who once fasted for days in penance, and how even the strongest warrior must feed both soul and flesh. The knight listens, but speaks little. He is not aloof, merely reflective. These men are not strangers. They are companions in duty. Many he has fought beside, some he has trained, a few he has even carried from the field. Bonds here are not formed in words, but in quiet respect and the shared weight of steel and expectation. As the meal continues, the kitchen hands move quietly in and out, carrying trays, collecting scraps, refilling bowls. One stops briefly near the knight. A girl, no more than 15, her apron stained, her eyes alert. She offers him a refill of cider. He nods in thanks. She nods back, then moves on. Every role within the castle, from cook to captain, exists in a delicate web of survival. No one is beneath gratitude. At the far end of the hall, near the fireplace, a minstrel occasionally sits. Not the grand court entertainer who performs for the high lords, but a simple player with a harp and a voice worn by wind and wine. He sings quietly now, more for the rhythm than the attention. The tune is old, a song of winter hunts and lost brothers, of stars seen through chainmail, of love left waiting in distant valleys. The knight's gaze drifts briefly toward the small window above the hearth. Through it, the courtyard is visible, bustling again. Horses being led to the outer paddocks, pages running with scrolls, a merchant arriving with a cart of salt and cloth. The world outside does not pause, not even for a meal. As the bread dwindles and bowls are scraped clean, the tone in the room begins to shift. Bellies are full. Conversations return. Jokes are traded like coins. Someone mimics the sergeant's morning drill instructions, drawing laughter. Another challenges his seatmate to an arm wrestling match, and a crowd quickly gathers to watch, betting scraps of cheese and crusts of bread. The knight smiles quietly but does not join. His thoughts are already drifting to the next duty. There may be patrols on the outer lands today, perhaps a dispute to settle between farmers over water rights, or a message to deliver to a neighboring estate. Each task, though small, is part of the whole. A knight's life is not measured only by battles, but by the peace he helps maintain. His squire returns with a cloth, offering to clean his hands. He accepts, then rises. Others rise with him, the unspoken signal that breakfast is ending. Benches creak. Mugs are gathered. The fire is stoked one last time before being left to smoulder. Before exiting, the knight takes a moment near the door. A wooden board hangs beside it, etched with a single phrase in the old tongue. The letters are faded, but still legible. Honor is in the habit, not the victory. He runs his hand across the carving, a ritual now, part of his daily exit. A reminder that greatness is not in moments of glory, but in the quiet, consistent choice to live by one's code. And with that, he steps back into the sun. The day has barely begun, but already the path is clear. There is service to offer. There is peace to protect. And for a knight, fed, armed, and grounded, the world awaits. The training yard, honing the skills of war. The sun now rises high enough to cast warm gold across the castle walls, driving out the last traces of morning chill. The air smells of earth and sweat and oiled leather. Birds chirp above the towers, but on the ground, the rhythm of metal against wood, of boots pounding packed dirt, of commands barked with clarity, fills the space with urgency. The training yard is alive. This is the proving ground, not for glory, but for readiness. Every knight, no matter how seasoned, returns here. Every squire dreams of graduating from this very soil. Here, the future is sharpened. Our knight approaches slowly, his shadow stretching long behind him. His armor, set aside for now, has been replaced with a lighter tunic and breeches that allow ease of movement. At his hip, a practice sword, dulled for safety, but with enough heft to sting when poorly blocked. He wears no helm, just a leather coif to cushion the inevitable blows. The yard is sectioned into spaces. In one corner, squires work on footwork, hopping between lines drawn into the dirt, practicing balance and speed. In another, two mounted riders spar with lances, aiming for padded targets as they gallop past. Near the center, a circle of knights trade blows under the watchful eye of a grizzled trainer, a man whose one blind eye somehow sees everything. The knight joins them. He nods to the instructor, who returns the gesture with a slight smirk. There is mutual respect there, earned over years. Without ceremony, the knight steps into the circle. Across from him stands another knight, a large man with a chest like a barrel and scars across both arms. They do not exchange words. They don't need to. The language of the yard is movement. They bow slightly. Then it begins. The clash of wood on wood resounds, drawing eyes from the far side of the yard. The two warriors trade strikes with speed and power, each testing the other's rhythm. The larger knight favors strength, wide, sweeping arcs. Our knight favors precision, quick thrusts, sharp angles, minimal wasted motion. It is a dance they've done before, and yet no two matches are ever quite the same. Blades meet with thuds and cracks. The knight sidesteps a heavy swing, counters with the strike to the ribs, only to find his own shoulder clipped in return. They break, circle, re-engage. Every motion is deliberate. Every mistake, a lesson. There is no room for ego here. Pride is left at the gate. After several minutes, the trainer calls a halt. Both knights lower their weapons and nod. No winner is declared. This isn't about winning. It's about refining, about making tomorrow's reflexes sharper than today's. The knight moves on to another section of the yard. There, squires are working with shields, learning to angle them, to deflect, to close gaps. One boy stumbles backward from a particularly hard strike, landing flat in the dust. He groans and covers his face in embarrassment. The knight steps forward, offers a hand, and helps the boy up. "You lost balance when you shifted your weight," he says gently. "Keep your back foot firm. Let your front guide you, not carry you." The squire nods, breathless, grateful. The knight gestures for him to reset. Then he picks up a shield and joins him, slowly demonstrating the movement. Teaching not with lectures, but through action. This, too, is part of his role. A knight is not only a warrior, but a mentor. The strength of a realm is built not on its walls, but on its people, especially the young ones who will one day inherit the sword. Later, in another corner, archers practice under shaded trees. Though the knight is not an archer by trade, he observes their technique with interest. The twang of bowstrings, the rhythmic thud of arrows into straw targets, the occasional cheer when a bullseye is struck. It is all part of the symphony of readiness. Beside the archers, a dummy on a wooden post is set up for blunt weapon training. The knight takes up a mace, a weapon he seldom uses in battle, but one every knight must understand. He swings carefully at the dummy, striking shoulder, torso, and thigh in sequence. The rhythm is different from swordplay. There is less finesse, more force. But even here, control is key. A wild swing is as useless as a missed one. Throughout the morning, the knight rotates through drills, swordplay, shield work, grappling, mounted exercises. He spends time with squires, offering guidance. Trades blows with younger knights, offering resistance. Receives instruction from older ones, offering humility. The yard does not judge age or rank, only effort, only consistency. By midday, sweat clings to every garment. Arms ache, thighs burn, but the knight does not falter. He thrives here, in this labor, in this tradition, passed down through generations. The body remembers what the mind sometimes forgets. That skill is not gifted. It is earned, drop by drop, bruise by bruise. He pauses beneath an overhang where water barrels are placed. He drinks deeply, rinses his face, and looks out over the yard. The noise continues. Swords clashing, voices calling out forms, hooves stamping. And beneath it all, something deeper. Purpose. These men are not sharpening their skills for sport. They are preparing for something sacred, the defense of those who cannot defend themselves. A memory flickers of a village once visited years ago, fields burned by raiders, children huddled in a church. The knight remembers riding in, sword drawn, heart steady. He remembers not the blood, but the silence after. The faces lifted toward him, the sense that his training, his effort, his relentless discipline had meant something. That is why the yard matters. And so, as the horn sounds again, this time for the midday meal, the knight returns his practice blade, nods to his trainer, and makes his way toward the hall once more. His body is tired, yes, but it is the good kind of tired, the kind that says, "Today I grew sharper, and tomorrow he will do it again. A call to court, honor, politics, and nobility. The sun has climbed high into the sky, casting its warmth across the stone walls of the keep and the tiled roofs below. The training yard begins to empty, its warriors trailing off to clean their gear, tend to bruises, and nourish their bodies. But for the night, the day is far from over. The castle's bell tolls softly, not the alarm of battle or the call to arms, but the ceremonial summons to court. A different battlefield awaits, one where the weapons are words, and the stakes are law, loyalty, and lineage. The knight exchanges his sweat-soaked tunic for clean garb, a finely woven surcoat bearing his family crest, polished boots, a light wool cloak, and a sword with gilded accents, not for fighting, but for show. His squire assists in brushing dust from his shoulders, checking every detail with the meticulous care of someone who knows appearances in court matter almost as much as deeds. Together, they ascend the central stair of the keep, a spiral of cold stone lit by flickering torches and tall arched windows. Here, the atmosphere changes. Gone is the scent of horse and iron. In its place, waxed floors, tapestries of distant ancestors, and echoes of quiet footfalls. The great hall is vast, designed to impress. High ceilings stretch like the ribs of a cathedral, and stained glass windows throw dappled light across the flagstones. A long table dominates the space, but it is not for feasting today. Instead, lesser lords, commanders and advisors line either side, seated by station. At the head, on a raised dais, beneath a carved wooden canopy, sits the liege lord. He is an older man now, his face weathered and thoughtful, framed by a circlet of silver. His garments are rich, but not ostentatious. He holds no scepter, for he does not need one. Power here is quiet, authoritative, and rooted in years of leadership, battle, and judgment. The knight bows deeply upon entry, as do the others. The court is already in session. Today's matters are many and varied. Disputes between farmers over grazing rights. A travelling merchant accused of shorting a noble woman's household on cloth. A message delivered from a neighbouring barony regarding border patrols. Each case is presented, weighed, discussed. The knight listens, hands folded before him, his face unreadable. When called upon, he steps forward. "Sir Alaric," the Lord says, addressing him with warmth and trust. "You rode to the eastern fields last week. Tell us what you saw." Alaric, our knight, recounts it clearly. 2 villages had argued over access to a river that had shifted slightly in course. The arguments had grown heated. One field had been burned, but thanks to his presence and the diplomacy learned from years of service, a truce was negotiated, temporary but promising. He speaks plainly, without embellishment. Facts matter here more than pride. The Lord nods. "Your judgment is sound as always. Send word to both villages. The matter will be resolved, as Sir Alaric outlined." The knight bows again and steps back. But court is not only a place for problem solving, it is also a stage of influence. Whispers pass between minor nobles about marriages, land exchanges, upcoming festivals, and potential alliances. Diplomacy here is a living thing. Every word, every glance has weight. The knight, though not of the highest noble blood, holds a unique position. His loyalty is unquestioned. His reputation in the field is unblemished. And so, when he speaks, others listen. Not out of fear, but respect. Later, a traveling emissary from another house presents a gift, a carved ivory box containing spices and silks from the southern lands. It is part tribute, part message. We are watching. We are present. We are worthy of your consideration. The liege accepts it with the grace expected of him, offering vague promises of continued friendship. Behind the mask of politeness, however, the court knows what it truly is. A maneuver, a move in a game of political chess that never ends. As discussions turn toward military matters, the state of the armory, the need for additional horses, the condition of the Western Watchtower, the knight leans in more attentively. These are matters in his realm of experience. He offers insight on the frequency of patrols, the morale of the garrison, and the aging state of several bridges near the border. His words are practical, rooted in observation. He has seen what others theorize. Not long after, a messenger enters with fresh news. A band of mercenaries was seen traveling the old forest road, armed and bearing no standard. Rumors swirl that they may be seeking employment or trouble. The room quiets. The Lord turns again to the knight. Would you ride out tomorrow, Sir Alaric, and see to this? Take a small company. Speak to them if they'll listen. Disperse them if not. The knight bows. It will be done. There is no hesitation. It is the duty he was born to, not for gold, not for fame, but because the realm must be kept safe, not only from great armies, but from the smaller, quieter threats that fester at its edges. As court begins to wind down, the Lord makes one final announcement. A young nobleman, barely of age, is to be knighted before the coming harvest. The knight recognizes the name, a boy he saw training clumsily months ago, more heart than technique. Still, the moment is sacred. Every knight remembers the weight of that sword on their shoulder, the vow, the shift from apprentice to protector. The court rises. The day's business is done. Outside, the sun casts long shadows now. Servants begin preparing for the evening meal. Guards change shifts. The knight makes his way down the stair again, back toward the yard, the barracks, the more physical rhythms of his day. But his mind lingers on the faces from court, the problems, the politics, the unspoken tensions. He knows that a kingdom is not held by swords alone, but by decisions, large and small, made in rooms like that. Honor is not only earned on the battlefield, it is forged in counsel, in patience, in service to justice and truth. To be a knight is to fight, yes, but also to listen, to advise, to bridge the gap between the ruling and the ruled. And so, with the court behind him and the road ahead, the knight prepares for what tomorrow may bring. The village ride, justice and presence among the people. The next morning dawns misty and cool. The village road, still damp from overnight rain, winds gently down the hill beyond the castle gates, past sloping meadows and early planted fields. Birds call softly from hedgerows, and the sky is painted with shades of pale blue and cream as the sun begins its slow ascent. It is a good morning to ride. The knight, already mounted and ready, waits near the outer gate with his small company. 2 other knights, a handful of men-at-arms, and his squire, who rides slightly behind with saddlebags of provisions and tools. Their armor is lighter today. No need for full plate, unless the road offers reason. Their presence is meant to be protective, not provocative. This is not a war band. It is a ride of peace, a patrol with purpose. The villagers know the rhythm of these rides. They know the steady clop of hooves on cobblestone. They recognize the banners fluttering above polished helms. To them, these knights are more than armed figures. They are reassurance. They are the law that comes not from parchment, but from people. The oath-bound face of justice. The knight greets the gatekeeper with a nod as the portcullis lifts and the group moves out onto the winding road. It's a route he's ridden many times, through the low woodlands, across the stone bridge carved with old runes, and past the orchard where children often chase goats and kick pouches stuffed with straw. As they pass, villagers emerge to wave or bow. Farmers pause with hoes in hand. Elderly women in aprons nod slowly from doorways. Children, never shy, run alongside the horses for a while, laughing and pointing at the knight's sword. One small boy holds up a wooden toy sword of his own, clearly carved by a loving hand. The knight smiles gently and reins his horse to a stop. He leans down, extending a gloved hand. "Do you protect your home, young knight?" he asks softly. The boy nods solemnly, puffing out his chest. "I guard the chickens." "A noble charge," the knight says, then lifts the child onto the saddle for a brief ride up the lane and back. The child's laughter rings out like birdsong. These moments matter. Further down the road, the party reaches the first hamlet, a cluster of cottages, smoke drifting from chimneys, and the distant sound of hammers from a blacksmith's lean-to. They dismount here, walking their horses through the muddy path between homes. A woman approaches with a worried look. Her son, she says, was caught stealing from a neighbor's root cellar. He is young, she admits, but strong-willed and proud. The village elder wants harsh punishment. She begs the knight to speak on the boy's behalf. The knight kneels beside her and listens, truly listens. After a moment, he stands and speaks with the elder, who appears in the doorway of a timber-framed hall. They talk in low voices for a time. The knight does not command. He reasons. He invokes the value of second chances, the importance of guiding youth rather than condemning it. He asks for a solution rooted in restoration, not retribution. The elder relents. The boy will be made to work with the blacksmith for 3 weeks, assisting with heavy labor and learning responsibility. If he complies, the matter will be closed. The knight returns to the mother and nods. "You've raised a son with spirit," he tells her. "Now we'll help him find discipline." Tears fill her eyes. She bows deeply. This is justice, as the knight sees it. Not the cold hand of punishment, but the patient shaping of a better future. At the village square, a gathering forms. News of the patrol's arrival spreads quickly. People bring petitions, some written, most spoken aloud. A dispute over land boundaries between 2 families. A complaint about the miller shorting flour weights. A concern about wolves seen too close to the sheepfold. The knight takes them all seriously. He writes notes on a small scroll he keeps in a leather case, promising to send a huntsman to investigate the wolves and to have the steward of the granary weigh the flour scales himself. These are not grand affairs, but they are the soul of the kingdom. In one corner of the square, an old man plays a small stringed instrument, singing a folk song in a cracked voice. It tells the story of a knight who rode into a valley to rescue a trapped farmer from a mudslide. Whether it happened or not, no one knows. But the people believe it. That's what matters. Before they leave, the knight visits the chapel at the edge of the hamlet. A modest structure of stone and wood with a single stained glass window depicting a saint with a sword. He kneels at the altar, says a quiet prayer for peace, and leaves a coin in the alms box. Back on the road, the party continues. The next village is smaller, quieter. Here, the fields stretch wide and open, and the people speak in softer tones. A young couple approaches the knight as he dismounts. They seek permission to wed. They live on land technically divided between two estates, and there is confusion over which lord has the right to bless their union. The knight listens, examines the old map carried by the village reeve, and makes a decision, fair, lawful, and binding. He will send notice to both lords. The couple will be wed at midsummer, a celebration of unity, not division. As the sun begins its descent, the patrol pauses at a brook to water the horses. The knight sits on a rock near the water's edge, wiping his brow. His squire offers him a flask. They drink in silence for a while, the soft bubbling of the stream, their only companion. "You handled the land dispute well," the squire says finally, his voice unsure but admiring. The knight smiles faintly. A sword can end a fight, but words can prevent one. The ride back to the castle is quiet. The sky is streaked with orange and violet. Smoke curls gently from chimneys in the villages left behind. The knight looks back once, watching the rooftops disappear behind a hill. He thinks not of battle or glory, but of the boy who guards chickens, the woman who cried with relief, the young lovers now planning their future. This is the part of knighthood few songs mention, but perhaps the part that matters most. For today, justice rode, and tomorrow it will ride again. Holy hour, prayer, reflection, and the code of chivalry. The castle lies still in the late afternoon light. Shadows stretch across the stone walls like long fingers, touching windows, courtyards, and quiet corridors. The hum of activity has slowed. The smith's hammer rests. The kitchens prepare for the evening meal. The training yard is empty. Now, a different kind of preparation begins. One not for combat or command, but for contemplation. In a quiet corner of the keep stands the chapel, modest, ancient, and deeply sacred. Its wooden doors are heavy, but unadorned. Its walls are thick, bearing the weight of both time and silence. Vines crawl up the stones outside, and the air inside is always cool, filled with the scent of wax and old incense. The knight walks here daily, sometimes alone, sometimes with others, but always with intention. He enters without fanfare. His boots echo softly on the worn flagstone floor. Sunlight filters through narrow stained glass windows, casting amber and crimson patterns across the pews. A single candle flickers near the altar, its flame steady and small, a symbol of faith, endurance, and humility. The knight removes his sword and lays it gently at the base of the altar. This is an old ritual, one that he learned as a squire. The act of laying down one's weapon in the presence of the divine is not surrender, but submission to a higher order. A reminder that justice and valor must serve something greater than personal glory. He kneels, rests his gloved hands on the bench before him, and bows his head. The prayers are quiet, sometimes whispered, sometimes simply felt. They are not recited from obligation, but drawn from memory and meaning. He gives thanks for strength, for safety, for another day lived in service. He asks forgiveness for pride, for any harshness dealt, for moments when he failed to meet the ideals he holds sacred. He seeks guidance for the road ahead, the lives under his care, the weight of decisions yet to come. These prayers are not theatrical. They are simple and human. A priest enters silently and nods in greeting before settling into a pew behind the knight. He too understands the rhythm of this hour. There is comfort in the routine, a sense that even in a world filled with uncertainty and war, this moment remains. On one wall of the chapel hangs an old tapestry, frayed at the edges, depicting a knight kneeling before a golden cross, his sword laid across his lap. Beneath it, in faded thread, are words in the old tongue. Honor is a flame within, not a crown without. The knight often finds himself staring at this image. It reminds him of what drew him to this path, not the clamor of the tournament or the thrill of combat, but the quiet strength of purpose, the choice to serve, to protect, to stand for something when it would be easier to turn away. He reflects on the code, the chivalric oath sworn in his youth, with one hand on a holy book and the other on the hilt of a blade. To protect the weak, to speak truth, to serve justice, to act with honor in all things, to defend the realm and its people, to uphold faith, loyalty, and mercy. These were not just words, they were a map, a compass he has followed through fields of fire and courts of whispers alike. But the code is not easy. There are days when anger flares, when doubt clouds judgment, when lines between justice and vengeance blur, days when honor feels heavy and unappreciated, when the world rewards cruelty more than kindness, when truth is inconvenient. On those days, this chapel is his anchor, his pause, his reset. The priest, sensing the end of the night's meditation, steps forward and offers a blessing. It is short, but sincere, a quiet invocation of strength, wisdom, and peace. The knight rises, bows once more at the altar, and reclaims his sword. It feels different in his hand now. Not heavier, not lighter, but grounded, re-centered. As he steps outside, the air greets him with a gentle breeze. The sun is lower now, casting golden light across the courtyard stones. Evening draws near. The knight makes his way toward the cloisters, where a few other knights and castle dwellers gather in low conversation. Here, under the arches, discussions turn to more philosophical matters. Not every knight is a theologian, but many are thinkers. They debate quietly the meaning of loyalty in times of corruption, the balance between mercy and law, the role of strength in a fragile world. The knight listens more than he speaks. He values the exchange, not because they arrive at answers, but because they care enough to ask the questions. He finds himself pondering the difference between reputation and integrity. One is what others see. The other is what one knows, in silence, without audience or applause. He remembers a time when he was praised for a battle he hadn't truly won. His opponent had fallen by accident. He'd said nothing, and the praise followed him for weeks. It still haunts him. That, he realizes, was the day he truly began to understand the code. As night falls and the bell rings out the final hour before supper, the knight rises from the cloisters. He has not solved the world's riddles, but he has sharpened his mind, as surely as the yard sharpens his blade. He returns to his chambers briefly, where his squire waits with fresh water and a change of clothes. The armor is put away. The dust is wiped from his boots. The day is nearly done. But it is this holy hour, this quiet, sacred pause, that will stay with him. For it is in the silence of the chapel, in the whispered code, in the humble recognition of one's faults and hopes, that a knight becomes more than just a warrior. He becomes a guardian of ideals, a protector of peace, a man who kneels not in weakness, but in wisdom. And as the stars begin to emerge above the towers, the knight prepares for the night with a mind cleansed and a spirit steady. Duel and display, the tournament grounds. As twilight deepens and torches are lit along the outer walls, the castle grounds take on a different energy. The hum of preparation returns, not for battle, but for celebration, display, and friendly rivalry. Tonight, a tournament is held, not a grand, week-long affair of pageantry and royal guests, but a local gathering, a feast for the eyes and a test of mettle, shared among neighboring knights, squires, and the folk of the surrounding villages. The tournament grounds lie just beyond the castle's southern gate, a wide open field ringed with wooden barriers, pennants flapping above them in the breeze. Small tents dot the edges where armor is stored and horses are tended. A makeshift grandstand has been built for noble spectators, while peasants gather freely around the open sides, children hoisted onto shoulders to catch a glimpse of the action. The knight, now armored once more, stands near the edge of the tilt yard. His armor gleams faintly under torchlight, newly polished by his squire. Across his chest, the familiar surcoat bearing his family's crest flutters as the evening wind brushes past. At his side, his sword is sheathed, not the dulled blade of training, nor the sharpened edge of battle, but a ceremonial one, used only for tournaments. It bears no intent to harm, only to test. A herald steps into the field, raising a staff adorned with ribbons. He calls out names in a booming voice. Knights from neighboring keeps, land-holding men of honor, seasoned veterans, and daring young warriors alike. Each is met with polite applause, a few louder cheers from the gathered villagers who favor their local champions. Our knight is named last. And when he steps forward, the response is warm, not thunderous, but filled with respect. His reputation precedes him, not as the most flamboyant duelist, but as one whose every blow is measured, whose honor is beyond question. The games begin. First come the jousts. That thunderous charge of two armored riders on great destriers, lances poised, hooves pounding earth, the world narrowing to a single fleeting collision. Though our knight is a capable jouster, he chooses not to compete in the lance bouts tonight. Instead, he saves his strength for the melee, the duels that follow. As others take to the tilt, he watches closely. Every pass is a lesson. How one knight shifts his weight just before impact. How another favors a high grip on the lance. There is always something to learn, even after years in the saddle. Between events, music fills the air. A small band of minstrels plays lutes and flutes, and nearby, vendors sell meat pies and honeyed apples. Children mimic the jousts with sticks, and young squires strut, dreaming of their own day in armor. Finally, the melee is called. Pairs of knights enter the ring, swords in hand, shields raised. This is not a brawl, but an art form, choreographed in structure, but filled with genuine force. Blows must land. Techniques must shine. The crowd craves not blood, but brilliance. Our knight steps into the arena. His opponent is a visiting knight from the northern woodlands, younger, fast on his feet, and well regarded for his agility. They bow to one another, then raise their swords. The duel begins. At first they circle, then a flurry of strikes, high, low, deflected. The sound of steel ringing against steel echoes through the grounds. The northern knight presses hard, hoping to overwhelm with speed. But our knight stays calm, guarding, absorbing, waiting. Then, an opening. He parries a wide swing and steps in, tapping the opponent's chest with the flat of his blade. A point scored. The crowd applauds, but it is not over. The duel continues through several rounds, each filled with precise strikes, blocks, and counterattacks. Dust rises around their boots. Torches flicker in the wind. Faces in the crowd lean forward, breath held. In the final round, the northern knight attempts a feint, a low swing meant to draw a downward block. But our knight anticipates it. He pivots and lands a clean blow to the side, pushing his opponent back. The match ends. Both men lower their weapons. They remove their helmets and clasp forearms. There is no bitterness in defeat, no arrogance in victory, only the unspoken bond of warriors who have tested each other and been found worthy. Later, as the tournament winds down and the remaining matches are fought, the knight sits near the field with his squire. They drink water from a shared flask and watch the final bout, their armor cooling in the night air. "Did I move too slow in the third round?" the knight asks. "A little," the squire says honestly. "He was faster, but your guard was tighter." The knight chuckles. He'll be a challenge in 5 years. He's already a challenge now. They watch in silence as the final duel ends in a draw. The crowd claps and cheers, and somewhere near the tents, a drum begins to beat. Not a war drum, but a rhythm for dancing. Nobles and villagers begin to mingle as a small celebration takes shape. Wine flows, stories are told, songs rise up into the stars. The knight stays only briefly, He walks among the people, exchanging greetings, offering congratulations. A baker thanks him for settling a dispute the week before. A young woman curtsies and asks if he'll ride in the royal tourney come autumn. He smiles and offers a vague answer. Maybe. Then, quietly, he slips away from the festivities. Not because he disdains them, but because he finds his joy elsewhere. In the quiet of night, in the satisfaction of a clean fight, in the knowledge that today he honored his craft. As he returns to the castle under the stars, his armor slung over one shoulder, his steps are light, not from pride, but from peace. Tonight, he did not fight for war, but for sport, for tradition, and for the crowd that still believes in the ideals behind the armor. And as the torches flicker behind him, and the cheers fade into the distance, the knight whispers a simple truth to himself. Even a blade needs joy to stay sharp. Feast in the great hall, songs, stories, and brotherhood. The castle is warm with life. Fires crackle in the hearths. Banners hang from wooden beams, and the scent of roasting meat, spiced wine, and fresh bread fills the air. The great hall is alive, not with orders or politics, but with celebration. The knight enters through the side door, his armor set aside, his tunic clean, and his hair damp from a quick washing. The long tables are already filling with nobles, squires, warriors, and even guests from the villages. This is no royal banquet, but a shared meal of joy, the kind that binds people together through food, music, and memory. The walls glow with torchlight, and laughter echoes off the stone. Minstrels pluck stringed instruments from a raised platform, weaving music through the din of conversation. A bard leans close to a cluster of children, spinning a tale of dragons and brave knights who outwitted them with wit and courage. The knight finds his seat among comrades. A cup of wine is passed into his hand before he even sits. Across from him, a grizzled warrior speaks animatedly about a tournament years ago, where his helm flew so far off his head, it landed in the Lord's lap. Laughter erupts around the table. The food arrives soon after. Platters of roasted venison, savory pies stuffed with onion and cheese, thick stews with root vegetables, and baskets of warm bread. Everyone eats heartily. The knight takes his time, savoring the flavors, grateful for the peace that allows such a feast to exist. Between bites, stories are traded like gold. Some speak of battles long past, of ambushes in fog-choked forests, of last stands on broken bridges, but others share softer moments, of lost loves, of songs sung on watch duty, of foolish dares from youthful days. The knight listens more than he speaks, adding the occasional comment, the occasional laugh. He knows that these moments, shared over simple meals, are the glue of loyalty. At the high table, the liege lord raises a goblet. The room quiets. To the strength of arms, the clarity of purpose, and the peace we've earned today, he says. May we never forget that the sword is only noble when held with honor. A toast follows, and wine flows again. The minstrels begin a new song, slower now, haunting and melodic. The melody drifts into the corners of the hall, and voices soften. Some lean back in thought, others close their eyes. The night watches the flickering candles and thinks of those who once feasted here and are now gone. Brothers lost in skirmishes, friends who never returned from the border. He lifts his goblet in their memory. As the song ends, the bard returns to center stage, reciting verses not of war, but of brotherhood, of two knights who rode together for years, never once breaking faith, of a lady who waited faithfully by a window year after year for her beloved's return, of the way the stars over the tower always look the same, even when hearts below them change. The room falls silent. For a moment, even the warriors forget their scars. Then, slowly, the sound returns. More music, more laughter. Someone begins clapping rhythmically, and a line of squires is pulled into a dance. Their awkward steps bring even louder cheers. The knight smiles and pushes back from the table. He walks toward a quieter corner of the hall, where a small alcove holds a window. Through it, he sees the moon, pale and high above the battlements. The night is clear. The world, at least for now, is calm. Behind him, the hall glows with life. He lets it wash over him. The voices, the warmth, the fellowship. Not every night is like this, but when it is, it stays in the heart. A hand claps his shoulder. A friend, another knight, nods and gestures back toward the fire. "Come, old wolf," he says with a grin. "They're telling tales of you now." The knight laughs softly and turns back to join them. He knows that tomorrow will bring duty once more, steel and discipline, judgment and service. But tonight is for stories, for songs, and for remembering that even warriors need to gather and simply be human. Nightfall in the keep, solitude, memory, and silent vows. The great hall dims as the final embers in the hearths begin to fade. Laughter has softened into murmurs, and most have retired to their chambers. Outside, the wind whispers through the castle walls, and the night wraps the keep in a quiet blanket of stars. The knight walks the familiar corridors alone now, his steps slow, thoughtful. The revelry has passed, and what remains is the silence of reflection. He does not fear solitude. It is in these moments, when the armor is gone, the duties paused, that he remembers who he is beneath the weight of his role. His chamber is modest, a wooden bed with woolen blankets, a simple writing desk, a narrow window through which the moonlight pours, painting silver across the stone floor. A small chest sits at the foot of the bed, filled with letters, old tokens, and memories he rarely shares. He sets his sword gently beside the door and lights a single candle. Its flickering flame casts long shadows on the wall. From a hook, he removes his cloak and drapes it over the chair. Then, with a tired sigh, he sinks onto the edge of the bed. His mind begins to replay the day, the ride through the village, the duel in the tournament, the laughter at the feast. Each moment felt small in isolation, but together they form something more. A day in service, a day of meaning. He opens the chest. Inside is a faded ribbon, once white, now nearly grey, tied into a delicate knot, a gift from someone long ago. Beneath it, a folded parchment, a letter from a fallen comrade. He reads it again, as he does every so often. The words a tether to the past, to a time of fire and bonds unbreakable. There's also a wooden carving, a crude figure of a horse, likely made by a child. He doesn't remember which village it came from, only that the boy who gave it to him had eyes wide with admiration. The knight has kept it ever since. He sets the items back carefully and closes the chest. Then he kneels.
There is no audience here, no chapel, no priest, just stone, moonlight, and silence.
He bows his head and speaks not with his lips, but within his soul, offering thanks for another day, asking strength for those to come. He remembers those he has failed and those he has saved. He renews the vow he made so many years ago, to live with honor, to serve with humility, to protect without hesitation. These are not just words, they are the foundations of who he is.
Outside the window, the stars shimmer like distant lanterns. Somewhere in the keep, an owl hoots softly. The world continues in its quiet rhythm.
The knight rises, extinguishes the candle, and lies back on the bed. He does not toss or turn. His body is weary, but his spirit is steady. As sleep begins to claim him, he thinks of tomorrow, of pages to train, roads to patrol, disputes to settle. The work never ends, but that is what gives it meaning. He closes his eyes, and the keep holds him like a stone cradle, safe, still, timeless.
In darkness, he dreams, not of war or glory, but of fields untouched by conflict, of voices laughing in peace, of a world where a knight's sword may one day rest for good.
And so ends the day. A day in the life of a knight. Not legendary, not fabled, but real, human, noble in its quiet purpose.